You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. And be sure to smash that like button. Well, we got really disappointing news earlier this week about John Emery. And we got pretty fascinating news on Thursday night about another LSU now running back. I'm not going to bury the lead. You probably have heard by now that LSU is moving Jawan Johnson to running back. I'll spell it out very quickly. Josh Williams, Caleb Jackson, freshman Caden Durham. That's it. Got 3 scholarship running backs. The antithesis of the problem you had a year ago where you had 8 scholarship running backs, which was way too many. Now you're down to 3. That's precarious. You can't have 3. So we're all hoping Trey Holly finds his way back. But in the meantime, they got to do something, and that something is Jawan Johnson. Okay, I'm going to react to that part of this, but I kind of want to lay out how this built up Thursday. So Thursday they practice, and then Brian Kelly meets with reporters after practice on Thursday. And the first question out the chute was very nondescript. It was basically like, how does the running game look? And you could take that a lot of ways, coming off of the game Sunday against USC, and now you're without John Emery. So it was really, hey, how does the running game look? Open-ended, take it wherever you want. And Brian Kelly chose to take it with a big picture, 10,000-foot view of the running game without any mention of John Emery's injury.
I think from a running game standpoint, I think really, as we continue to, unwrap the running game from last week, it really was situational more than anything else. It was our short yardage running, situational running. And I think, as you and I talked about it earlier in the week,
he goes on. It's not telling you anything. He does at the end of that bite say something very interesting, though, where he said, I think the running game will be the strength of our team, not just of the offense. That's interesting. Okay. But that wasn't really where the question was going. So the next follow-up is a very specific question about replacing John Emery. And so now that Emery's not there, like, what do the numbers sort of look like without John Emery? And Brian Kelly chose not to talk about the numbers, but about John Emery.
Sometimes you think about this and you just wonder, how can this be fair in any way to this poor kid? I mean, he's just overcome so many obstacles, and he's in a non-contact situation, and he sticks his foot in the ground, and he tears his knee up, and so it was just so disappointing. He had surgery today, successful surgery.
So he talked about Emery, and rightfully so. We should be talking about John Emery, and Brian Kelly needed the opportunity to go on the record about John Emery. But the question was about the numbers at the running back position. And so then later someone pressed and asked specifically about Caden Durham, the freshman, getting some opportunities this week. But listen, because several times in this bite, Brian Kelly specifically mentions the number of running backs. And then listen very particularly at the end of the soundbite.
He'll be involved. He had a good week. And, I think all 3 backs, really what we tried to do is tailor the offense for them in terms of giving them the kind of plays that they feel really comfortable with and setting the offense accordingly for those 3 guys. So, we feel really good about where we're at. And obviously, we'd love to have John. Obviously, that's not going to be the case moving forward. And maybe we'll investigate, moving forward. Is there another, candidate for that position? But that's where we're at right now, and we feel good about it.
Maybe we'll investigate a candidate moving forward. But the questions continued coming. And ultimately, with one more running back question about numbers and moving positions, Brian Kelly finally came clean.
We moved Jawan Johnson to running back. So he's getting some carries and touches this week. And, I think he's going to win the Heisman. No, he's not going to. I'm just kidding with you. But he's going to play some running back for us, and he gives us the 4th back and gives us a little bit more balance there. And, he's an exciting player. He can do a lot of things. We felt like we could shuffle some things around on the defensive side of the ball and begin to get him involved. There's a learning curve on some of those things, but certainly I think he can do some things for us this weekend.
Okay. But by the way, Kelly started that by saying, look, I mean, y'all obviously want to know the info. I'm not going to be the guy who doesn't share. So he just the question before he says we might consider exploring something else, and then the very next one he's saying, all right, fine, look, we moved Jawan Johnson. So it took 4 questions to get the answer, but he finally came through on it. Okay, I would assume that by nature of the fact that you're listening to Sports Talk Radio, you probably know a lot about Jawan Johnson. Maybe you don't, because not everybody is super deep into recruiting, and I get that. But by and large, I think a lot of you probably have heard the name or familiar. So Jawan Johnson went to LCA, Lafayette Christian. Last year, he was Mr. Football in the state of Louisiana. He was a top 10 cornerback in the country for the class of 2024. So he's a true freshman. He was a top 10 cornerback. He has spent this year in fall camp, however, playing defensive back, and mostly because of the numbers at corner, mostly playing star. Throughout fall camp, he was the number 2 star behind Major Burns. Now, late in camp, we saw Javen Toviano play a lot of star. So Jawan Johnson's this really athletic guy, super talented guy, just a man without a home right now because there's a lot of numbers and veteran players in the defensive backfield. What I failed to mention, however, is that Jawan Johnson, while he was recruited as a cornerback, was a 4-year starter at quarterback for LCA. And not only was Jawan Johnson a 4-year starter at quarterback for LCA, he led Lafayette Christian to 4 consecutive state championship games. 4. And when he graduated, Jawan Johnson left Lafayette Christian as the all-time leader in Louisiana high school football history in yards and touchdowns. He accounted for 14,451 yards and 171 touchdowns, both state records. By the way, when you dig a little deeper, in the state championship game in 2023 against St. Thomas More, he threw for 270 and ran for 187. He basically had a Jaden Daniels against Florida day in the state championship game. As a junior, he set the championship game record with 595 total yards. He broke Brock Berlin's Louisiana record for total offense in a state quarterfinal win. All the dude did with the ball in his hand was make plays at LCA. If you're a high school football fan, you know this. Not everyone locks into high school football or recruiting. You may have just heard us talking about Jawan Johnson in fall camp as a guy playing defensive back. He ran for 270 yards against Jesuit, a 5A Catholic League school in New Orleans. The quarterback ran for 270. It's not like he was playing 1A schools and just outclassing them. Dude was doing it against Jesuit and St. Thomas More and big boys in Louisiana high school football. He is a dynamic dude with the ball in his hands. Now, I don't know if how seamlessly you can transition. You got to learn the plays and the terminology and all, but there's something to be said for the simplicity of saying, hey, you, number 8. By the way, so Jawan Johnson's changed his jersey number from 24 to 8, by the way. So now he's moving to offense. Because on defense, Major Burns wears 8. So, hey, 8, go stand next to the quarterback. You're going to snap him the ball. He's going to hand it to you. Just run. Run to the left side. And then let your athleticism take over. I'm oversimplifying it, but LSU's a 49-point favorite against Nicholls. This game is a total abomination. It's not worth playing. You know how I feel about it. Power teams playing FCS schools is a freaking joke. What happened to all the FCS schools last week against SEC teams with a glut of points, it's going to happen in Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. It's atrocious. Nobody wants to see it. But you want a reason to hang around in the second half after LSU puts up, 40 in the first or whatever they're going to score against Nicholls. Nicholls is a good team, by the way, but it's just a completely different level of competition. You want a reason to stick around? Caden Durham, Jawan Johnson. To watch those two guys run the football in the second half, let me see what that looks like. Oh, I'm interested. You better believe I'm interested. I'm not telling you Jawan Johnson is going to go, as Brian Kelly joked, win a Heisman, be an All-American, but I'm interested. I'm very interested to see what that looks like because that was a guy that wasn't going to make an impact on the defensive side of the ball as a true freshman, and he very well could make an impact on the offensive side because of your sheer lack of numbers at running back. Jawan Johnson. That is going to be one worth watching to see when he gets his first touch. And Brian Kelly said, he is going to play running back against Nicholls on Saturday. I can't wait to see it. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.